Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Anne and this is the Health Hub. So today we'll be going through the top 5 most hectic specialties. Okay, so basically if you watch my other video where I explain how the specialist system works in South Africa, or how specializing works in South Africa. So you graduate as a general practitioner, thereafter you apply for a registrar post so that you are able to study and get training. It's around 4 to 5 years. Thereafter, once you have passed the examinations, you then are qualified as a doctor, and also there's components of research that has to be done and has to be submitted in order for you to be a qualified specialist. So that's basically how this whole thing works in South Africa. So it's kind of weird, like having to explain the most hectic specialties, because technically, because of how the system is set up, this video is technically for medical officers or registrars, more than it is for the actual specialists, because of the way the system is set up. Specialists play a more advisory role rather than they don't actually do the actual work. So people who actually do the work are normally the medical officers, the registrars, and specialists are normally just advisors. They'll be around during ward rounds for handovers and give their specialist opinion. They also will be on call, but rather a specialist under the specialist's call. And even so, they only get called when maybe there's like a difficult procedure or like a case that is too hard for the medical officer to do. So they're also called in only when there are issues. So because of that, in a way, this video is just explaining, or this video is just listing the most hardest, rotations, or the most hectic departments that you will have to work or find yourself working in as a medical officer or as a registrar if you are en route to specialty. So in saying that, most of the specialists who do like the hardest work or have to struggle the most in their careers are specialists who choose to work in both private and public. So that's when they're actually just chasing the money, trying to work double jobs and whatnot. So they will have their full-time jobs in public hospitals where they are the advisors, and bulk of the time, majority of the time, unfortunately, which is something that's not legal technically, they will be running their practices in private, doing operations in private, and basically working twice as hard to try to make more money. So generally, specialists are in control of the amount of work that they put in and the amount of work that goes into their careers. So if you are someone who is family oriented, you could still do one of these, hectic specialties and just remain in public. And that'll sort of like free up your time. You could still do the things that you want to do. You act more of an advisory role. And you get to do what you like. So that is the other thing that most people will do. So in terms of the finances, I don't think it's rewarding, financially. But up to you. I know a lot of people, like myself, I wouldn't typically go for these specialties solely because I want to work hard. Like, I'm not trying to not sleep. I'm not trying to suffer as a medical officer. So I'm not trying to suffer as a specialist either. But if it's the kind of stuff that you're into, good luck. Let's get to the actual list of the top 5 most hectic specialties. So number 1 is emergency medicine. So emergency medicine can be a bit stressful. Not a lot of people specialize in it. Apparently, people are not really into it, or I guess it's even hard to pass or maybe get in. Emergency medicine specialists, they'll work in a casualty. They're quite rare, to show how rare they are. Majority of casualties are headed by family physicians, because there's not a lot of emergency medicine specialists, especially in South Africa, which is weird because South Africa is one of the leading countries when it comes to trauma. So yeah, that's the weird thing about it. But basically how it is that you work in a casualty. I'm a medical officer that's working in the emergency medicine department, and I can tell you it's not as bad as it seems. Yes, you see the emergencies, people come in bleeding, people come in, like, there are emergencies that actually do happen, but they're normally kind of the same kind of things, so after like the 50th time you see a DKA or the 60th time you see a stab chest, it's like meh, so Emergency medicine is quite cool. You don't have patients. As a specialist, you only put into that specialist, call section or advisory type role where you only do handovers, etc. But if you are actually a medical officer, medical officers, work in casualties together with, interns, conserves, etc. So I enjoyed, throughout my experience, I worked casualty as an intern, as a conserve, as well as a medical officer. I enjoyed it, and I still do currently, because it's honestly not that bad. Majority of casualties, will have shifts because of how hectic things are and things become. They'll normally, have shifts where you, told to come in at a specific time till a specific time. In as much as it is hectic, because of such things that are put into place, it ends up not being so bad. So the other nice thing about casualty is that you don't have patience. People come and go. It's either you have a problem, you come in, you fix it, you go. There's no staying. There's no, seeing someone who's sick for 5 months or wherever. Literally, they come and go. If you can't fix it, or if it requires admission, you send it for review by that specialty department, be it review by gynae, review by peds, review by gen surg, review by anything. That's how it actually works. That's a nice thing. There's no patients who actually stay in casualty. They come and go. You also play a role in like stabilizing patients and seeing them get better, saving a life. So it's cutthroat. There's resuscitations, there's defibrillations. It's like hectic. Sometimes if you have anxiety, being in a casualty can become a trigger. I don't know. It can become a trigger, like especially if you are someone who suffers from anxiety, because ufika is hectic that need to be solved or need solving. So basically, because of that, if you have anxiety issues, maybe it's not for you, but you can't get away from it. You can't run away from it. We all are expected to rotate through casualty. In America, where there's no medical officer system and you are the one that has to be on the ground as a specialist, then yes, it makes sense for it to be like hectic and like disgusting, because you have to stay there. There's no leaving. It's not like other specialties where you wait to be called. You actually are on the ground waiting for anything that may come through the door. And I think the nice thing about it is just you never know what to expect. So everything is new. Like one day it's a foreign body, the next day is this. So it really keeps you on your toes, and you never know what you're going to see. No day is the same as the other. It's not like you see a lower respiratory tract today, lower respiratory tract tomorrow, TB HIV tomorrow, TB HIV again the next day, defaulters, blah, blah, blah. It's something different every day. So if you're someone maybe who gets bored, then maybe this is for you. So emergency medicine departments in private hospitals are rather not so busy, like they're not hectic, and therefore is more manageable. So that's the only difference, I guess, with regard to public and private. But let me tell you, the best thing about working in casualty is that because they know that it's a busy department, you will probably get pre-call, you will probably get post-call, there'll probably be shifts. So it's actually not that bad. It's really not that bad. Okay, let us move on to number 2. And the second most hectic specialty is, let me go to the expected, gen surg or general surgery. I will then include minor specialty like trauma, specific branches of surgery, trauma, vascular surgery, so this includes all of surgery. Most of these specialists will feel the bulk of the work, like I already mentioned, when they are working in private, right? Because they have to do the laparotomies, they have to do the appendectomies themselves. Whereas in public, it's medical officers and registrars who do the bulk of the work, as well as interns. So like I said, specialists in public are more advisory, and they just get called when things get heated and difficult, So it's still the same, even with gen surg. If you choose to just stay in public, then it's less hectic, but you might not make as much money as you could. But if you choose to work both public and private, then that's when, you feel the bulk of the work and, the stress, having to work both public and private. But the money, I guess, is a lot and it's more rewarding. So as a medical officer who is allocated in the surgical department, personally, I rotated as an intern. So that's as much as experience I have in terms of surgery. It was nice, man. You never had really like sick patients. Most people will come and go, most people are healthy. It's not really sickly people. That's why surgeons are like semi allergic to sickly people. Whenever they see something that's strange, whatever, they'll want other departments to chip in for medical to, I don't know, they'll ask for a medical consult. So yeah, they're not really into like sick patients, and most of their patients are not chronically ill. It's patients who are gunshot wounds, who take into theatre for laparotomies, and vascular, injuries, and are taken to theatre for repairs and things like that. So most of the work is just, it's okay, man. They also come and go. Most of their patients also don't stay in hospital forever, and they're not sick forever. So Gen Surg was actually nice. We finished early in terms of the rounds, but the calls get hectic. Like, I remember as an intern, like I didn't really initially, I didn't know it mattered when I do the call until I think the second month, where I was like, hey guys, you can't do calls 15-month end, things like that, like the big days when there's a Soweto derby, things like that. Like, it will get hectic, and in regional small and hospitals, you will be on your own. Like, you will literally be on your own, suturing patients all night, seeing 20 crush injury patients. It gets hectic. Like, I know that you don't have a lot of notes to do, and in terms of the examination, it's not as bad as internal medicine. Like, you don't have to rack your brain about what the patient has, but the load, when it comes to trauma, it gets really bad. I just remember this one night we had like 2 laparotomies. In between labs, I had to go see patients in casualty because they'd be crushed patients, like no place to sit. Like, casualty would just be a mess. And then after then we had vascular surgery, like at night for like 5 hours. Like, guys, like, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And the environment, and so obviously surgeons are seen as the, and they also treat themselves as the MVPs, the VIPs. And I guess I don't know if they have the right to call themselves that, but because they're just there to chop whatever's wrong, fix the patient, send the patient home. One thing about surgery that I didn't like and I didn't appreciate was the lack of post-call. Like, everywhere, like, there's this whole toxic thing, like, you don't rest as if you're like a machine. It's just disgusting how you'll be up all night and you're expected to function. No one cares. They keep it moving. You don't have a right to do whatever. I remember most of the longest hours I've ever worked in my whole entire existence were in surgery, where there's no pre-call, right? So you come into work at 8 a.m. and then by 4 p.m. the call starts. You've been at work the whole day prepping patients or assisting in theatre. The call starts at 4 p.m. And then literally, if it's one of those busy weekends or busy days, like, or some car accident or taxi accident happens, it just messes up your whole night, and there'll be ops on ops on ops. Like, you'll be up all night. The one time I was literally up all night until the next day. Went to the handover meeting, went to the handover round. After the round, then there's ward work, and I'm just like, what the hell? Like, what the hell? I left at like 3 the next day, like in the afternoon. Imagine having to be alive for that long and be expected to function and think and do the things. Like, it's a hazard. Like, specialists live the life, MOs do the most. And that is the chorus of this song. Moving on to the third specialty that is actually quite busy and hectic, and that is obs and gynae. The obs and gynae, guys. I'm still there a little bit, but it's also very similar to surgery also. Like, busy, and you can never time it. You can't say I want to calls on busy days, Mondays are busy, blah. But people give birth every day. People get pregnant every day. There'll be ectopics left, right, and center. There'll be, miscarriages every day. Like, it's just a mess. It's a mess, Also, with regard to ONG, most of the stress that specialists will face is if they decide to work in private, because they have to see their own patients, they have to do and operate on their own patients. So that can become a bit tricky. But let me tell you, they make so much money. Obs and gynae specialists make so much money. There'll always be someone pregnant every time, ever, in life, There'll always be someone with an infection. There'll always be ectopics. There'll always be miscarriages. It's just the way life is set up. So yeah, that is that with them. As medical officers or registrars working in the department, normally they split you into clinics, maybe some in theatre, some in gynae clinics, some in ANC. so to see that some of the patients. Generally okay. Generally it's a system that functions well when people are there and present and working. But personally, in my whole entire existence, like, I don't know really. I don't know if it's just my experience, ne, with regard to gynae departments, but you find that people in those departments are either bayalova abafike emsebenzini. I don't know what causes that environment. I think sometimes maybe it's the blame game and the lawsuits and the stress regarding, who did what. This baby has low up gas, you could have done this, you should have done this. So I think such environments sort of create like, I don't know, like animosity among people, So normally day-to-day working is okay, it's good. Calls, however, especially I think on the obstetric side, tend to become hectic because the decisions you make actually play a role in how the mom and baby outcome is. And because of how the government or departments of health takes issues of maternal outcome and baby outcome seriously, it puts so much stress on the doctor who's on call personally. And you don't want a maternal death. It's just stressful. I think even in private, one of the reasons why most people won't want to specialize in obs and gynae is mainly because of lawsuits or litigation. And with the way the health system is set out in South Africa, sometimes there's no CTG machine, sometimes there's issues with the ambulance. So there'll always be something wrong. There'll always be something that could have been done better. But in private, even there, the specialists have to pay a ridiculous amount of money to insurances, so that should they be taken to court for lawsuits or whatnot, they are able to be protected in that manner. So that's the biggest issue with ONG. Other than that, it is hectic. You work all night, it's hard, you can never predict, it's hectic. But I think also it's very rewarding. I mean, when a baby comes out, how beautiful is that? Like, specialty number 4 to look into is pediatrics. Peds. So with peds as well, man, peds is just the same as obstetrics in terms of, if you want to stay in public, and you're not after money, and you will be satisfied with the money that you're receiving, then it's fine. You don't have stress at all. The bulk of the work is done by medical officers and registrars. They suffer the most, and interns. Peds is rough. It is rough. And majority of people who work in tertiary hospitals might not know this, because there'll be 4 people on call, so you'll only call only one station, or there'll be 2 people for neonates, 2 people for pediatric ward, 2 people for casualty case, 2 people for high care, so they'll split it in a sense that they won't feel how hectic it is. Whereas if you are actually someone who is working in a regional hospital, hey, let me tell you something you don't know. Peds is hectic, more especially if you are placed in smaller hospitals, because they'll literally most of the time be 1 or 2 people on call, ne? And it's impossible. You can't split yourself into 4. It's impossible. Imagine being called in casualty for a resus of a dehydrated malnutrition baby, and there's also a long line in casualty. Labor ward now, you phone for fetal distress, doc, come and catch a baby or assist with the resuscitation of a baby, fetal distress. Also, high care ward or ICU is calling, drip is out, 4 drips are out, which you have to go maneuver. And bear in mind, those drips take more hours, to have to reinsert. And then on top of that, there's also calls from pediatric ward. On top of that, there's jaundice babies who you have to do TSBs on. Next thing, you go to labor ward, there's preterm babies who you have to, who are twins, who are 26 weekers, please come catch the babies. Then you have to admit those babies, put in surfactant, put in UV lines, send for x-rays, come back, admit in the file. And they want, pediatric, consultants are very pedantic when it comes to how they want the things to be done. They want, literally, I remember when I was an intern, they wanted us to do so many things, to have a family tree. Imagine, they had a whole booklet on your admission of, a family tree, what food the child is eating, a whole feeding history. They strict about those things. Very, very strict about their things. So you can't even take shortcuts, because they also take pediatric deaths seriously. It is not a joke. A child cannot die in life, nor can the child's mother, they cannot. die. It's unacceptable. So they also are really strict on that, which I think is one thing that will put pressure on the doctors working in those departments. But specifically, personally, for me, the hardest was pediatrics. Like, I feel like I powered through everything, but peds for me, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You know, when you just like, you can't even close your eye just once, you know, it's impossible, you know. One moment postnatal is calling you, this baby can't breathe, can do more esophageal trees. Food is not going down, baby's foaming in the mouth. Like, it was just like, guys, like, all my night, you know, when I think of nightmares and just anxiety and just like stress at some rotation in my lifetime, that rotation was definitely peds. End of story, full stop, draw a line. Let's cut. And let's move on to number 5. So the 5th most hectic specialty is internal medicine. You know, internal medicine, I think it's not really hectic, but I think in terms of the amount of patients that you have, or just the patient load as a whole, it makes internal medicine disgusting. You know, it's just, there's so many patients and people are like sick. People are sick and dying, and that is just the theme of the whole, you know, of the whole department. Yeah, internal medicine. If you've ever rotated internal medicine, you know that death, you know, and it's just like the most, I don't know, like, it's just like you admit someone, this person's gonna die, like, and it's just like you do whatever you do the most, but a lot of our people default, blah blah blah. So a lot of their patients are actually really sick, you know. So internal medicine, because of the load, can become really hectic. And on top of that, you know, even as an intern and as a medical officer, ward work, like you have to do bloods again, trying to figure out what the patient actually has, you know, doing BMATs. There's a lot of procedures that come into play as well. I think as a specialist, like I said, it's more advisory, so they're just there for the ward round. Because they play a more advisory role, they have more time, because most of them after the ward round will go on to do whatever they want to do, and most of them will want to go work and make more money in private. And basically how it works in private is that most of them will have their private like offices or, you know, practices, and they do charge specialist prices, just like how gynaes and surgeons do, and pediatricians do, which is around 1,000 rand to 1 point something. Some will go up to 1.5. And they do work together with hospitals and will admit patients into some of the private hospitals and will follow up their patients there. And the other thing with what they actually do is that some will actually even work in the ICUs in those private hospitals and make ridiculous amounts of money. So yeah, that is that with regard to physicians. Otherwise, some will subspecialize. I think with a subspecialty, there's even less of a patient load that you're having to see. Sort of narrows out your patients. Some will specialize in nephrology, some will specialize in pulmonology, etc., based on what they're actually particularly interested in, and some will just stay as just general physicians. So that is that with regard to physicians. But I think with them, even when they're working in private, it's not as hectic as the surgical specialties. So the medical ones like peds, like internal medicine specialists, it doesn't get that bad, because there's no theater time that is added to what they actually have to do, as opposed to when you're actually in gynae or gen surg, or ortho. So with them, they, even when they're working in private, it's not as hectic and they do make money still. So then moving on to the last one, I'll keep it at 6, guys. Like I don't want to make this video long, so let's keep it at 6. And basically my number 6 is ortho, or orthopedic surgery. So ortho is nice, man. Like, it's a bit hectic also. Basically they're so bone focused. Like, they see bone and drills and hammers. They don't really care about nothing else other than the bone. So basically orthopedic surgeons who have specialized also act more of an advisory role when they are working in public, but also they're one of the few like specialist doctors that I've seen that will actually be at their clinics, So what I've seen about them is that, during their OPDs, like they will have specialists there, especially to advise, the registrars, the MOs about the actual diagnosis or what to do with the specific bones or some of the complicated fractures, or also just to see the patients that they will be operating on. So personally for me, what I'd seen is that, the specialists, what I'd seen is that they are the ones who are used mainly, like they're the most hands-on specialists in public. They will still do operations as specialists, whereas in other departments, specialists zifika zenze handover zazo, zenze advisory roles zazo, and they will go home or go to their private practices. So the orthos, which is one thing that impressed me about them, is that the specialists would actually be on the ground to advise, to do, to show, to teach. So that's the one thing about them that I found most appealing, which makes me, question if it's actually possible for them to actually have, private gigs, during working hours, or do they, do those private gigs during days which are not OPD days, maybe 3 days a week, where they'll have their own practices in private and see their own private patients and do their elective cases of their private patients in private hospitals. So I think that's what they actually do, really. But that should only mean one thing, that they actually work really hard. Like they actually work ridiculously hard, So I don't know if you're really up to work hard in your life, and also make like a ridiculous amount of money. Then ortho is your thing, especially if you have, you work smart. They say you don't really have to have the muscles, but if you actually know how to work smart, you can even lift the heavy legs and don't. Personally, manual labor, guys, guys, manual labor is not for me. It is not. I don't mind an ortho locum, right, to go like assist, because they actually pay good money, but regarding, actually having that be my life, guys, sometimes like my arms are tired. Sometimes your arms like limp and tired, but they like, I think it's the most physically tasking, specialty that there is. But I also think it's one of the most rewarding monetary wise, specialty that there is. So if you are into that, hammering, drilling, into logical things, putting things together, then ortho is your thing, and you're into working hard, then this is probably your field.
So one thing I didn't mention about ortho is the toxicity, especially in tertiary institutions, man. If you listen to any of their handovers of their academic rounds, the way they laugh at people, guys, it's really sad. The worst, degradation of a human being and embarrassment and humiliation I've seen was in ortho. So if it's something that you really want to go into, make sure that you have literally the heart and the balls to withstand any form of embarrassment and humiliation publicly. So it's almost like a culture of the ortho departments across board.
Ortho is otherwise nice, even as a medical officer. They teach you a lot. They'll show you how to do things, how to put up pops, how to, manipulate, they'll teach you a lot of things. So you will come out competent, So yeah, ortho is a nice one. Ortho is a nice one if you're into it. So yeah, I just mentioned 6 guys, like just to sort of make this video short. But if you have any suggestions of other specialties that you might know that are actually really hectic, you can literally link them down below. You can just chat about it in the comment section down below. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Make sure you also like, you comment, you subscribe, and do link down any other video suggestions. If you have linked it down before and I forgot, I'm sorry, do link it down again, so that I'm able to be reminded of a video to do in the future. So yeah, thanks for watching. I will catch you on my next video.